Now, just like everybody else, I love a good shonen anime, but we need more diversity in anime. I do want to preface this, like, genres of anime that I go over in this video. If animes of these genres are out and I just don't know about them, let me know in the comments. But I say we need more diversity in anime because I feel like we gotten to a point to where, at least from what I've seen, it's more or less we've just been getting shonen, and every now and again we'll get like, a comedy anime or kind of like a meme anime like One Punch Man or something like that. But this video is just to go over some genres that I think anime could use more of to have more diversity in the anime community and the anime that we watch. I titled this section No More Superpowers because no, I'm not meaning that, every anime doesn't need to have superpowers anymore. I mean this in more of the animes in these different genres need to be a little more down to earth. But I feel like if we could have more animes that's not about people with, powers and everything, or if they do have powers, they're more or less like limited and more simple. Like one movie that I feel like does this kind of plot or a point that I'm making really well is Chronicle. Now, Chronicle is basically a movie about these 4 friends who stumble upon this, I think it was like magical rock or some shit, and it basically gives them, powers of telepathy and power of flight. Simple powers, but the story of how they start to, first, play around with their powers and have fun with it, but how it spirals out of control is a really good and great story. Now, they don't have any of these, complicated powers that they need to, train, months and years to really learn how to do. It's just they have flight and telepathy. And they use it, first for, medial things like, doing tricks, playing pranks on people in like stores and all the other type of shit. But but they have simple powers, they have simple uses, but as the story unravels and as their lives unravel, it becomes more of a complicated situation. And I feel like this is something that we could use a lot more in anime. More or less simple powers in more or less simple situations with simple powers that turn into more complicated situations, and not these complicated powers that end up being not these complicated powers that can destroy galaxies and destroy worlds and all this other type of crazy shit, but really just simple stuff that unravels into a more complex situation that allows for more freedom with the characters and allow the story to be more character based instead of power based. Because I feel like what happens a lot of time is anime is so, focused on the powers and, how the powers can destroy this planet or destroy this galaxy, or, one blast can destroy this whole town, that it kind of loses its focus. And, this was supposed to be about the characters, but now all of a sudden this is just about the powers and how they affect everything and not really paying attention to the characters anymore. DBZ does this a lot where, especially in Super now, I feel like they're so focused on the transformations and who's the strongest and ignoring the characters and their arcs and how they become better people or how they become a villain and stuff like that. One of the first genres that I do want to go over in this is horror. And I am going to lump horror and, psychological thrillers into one genre by itself. But further reiterating my point about the no powers thing, I feel like a anime where people don't necessarily have powers, but it's sort of like a psychological thriller horror anime, I guess you could call it. I feel like that would be like the perfect genre for this. I feel like that would be a perfect genre for anime to explore way more, because there have been like animes with like horror aspects, but I feel like we're at the point where we could use a full-fledged like horror anime. And no, I'm not meaning like, the cheesy no, I'm not meaning like the cheesy, horror movies with like every single horror trope in like a 2-hour movie. I'm more or less meaning a movie like Jacob's Ladder or like Shutter Island even. Stuff like that, stuff that's like, it's not necessarily using like a bunch of jump scares, but like it still scares the fuck out of you with like subtle things and like subtle reveals that like slowly unravel into the plot. And I feel like, this is kind of a side note, but I feel like with animation and anime, there's way less limitations than it is with using real life actors and real life people. I feel like with anime and animation, there's no limits to what you could do or what you could portray or what you can make an anime about. So I feel like if we really want to make like a psychological thriller or like a horror genre type anime, I feel like this would be the perfect time to do it because there's no limits. You can draw whatever kind of monster or entity or whatever, right? And I feel like that would make a really great anime. Because a lot of times what happens, speaking on like anime, you know, not really having limitations, anime does genres a lot better than regular, you know, Hollywood movies. Anime does action better than a lot of Hollywood movies. Even though shonen and action animes have the same, you know, kind of tropes that, you know, action movies and horror movies do and any other genre that Hollywood movies do, the way that anime characters are portrayed is way better than a lot of Hollywood movies. Because the way that the story is told, the way that the characters interact with each other, a lot of times it's more real and you get way more emotion out of these characters, out of the scenes and out of the, you know, the animation for the characters and the situations that they go through. So I feel like anime really could take over the horror genre. Kind of like how the Shutter's film studio is kind of taking over horror in a way. I feel like a lot of anime studios could take over the horror genre especially. And also another thing, when I mean like horror anime, I don't mean like some real like over the top gory type shit that's not really scary but just trying to be gory just for the sake of being gory, kind of like the Saw movies and Final Destination. I'm not meaning anything like that. I'm meaning kind of like real like subtle shit that's scary. I feel like that's the best type of scary, where it's like real subtle things that make the scene scary instead of trying to be over the top with all the gore and people limbs getting cut off and all the other type of crazy shit. I mean like real subtle shit, leaning more to the psychological thriller side of things and less away from like the slasher type of shit. Next genre that I feel like we need way more in anime is the spy/detective. Now I say spy/detective, and I do know that the anime Spy Family is out. I haven't gotten around to watch it yet, so don't yell at me. But I do feel like we are really lacking in more of the like detective kind of spy genre, because I feel like outside of Spy Family, I don't really think we have like a detectives kind of like Sherlock Holmes style anime. Where I don't know if we have a Law and Order SVU equivalent in anime. I don't know if we have that. If there is, please let me know. But like, I genuinely do not think we have it. But if we do, like I said, let me know. But I feel like the spy and detective genre, just like horror, I feel like this is the genre that anime could abso-fucking-lutely take over. Because we saw it with Cowboy Bebop. Where they were basically spies and like detectives and shit. But I feel like anime could take that genre over completely. And I feel like it's a perfect like balance between that shonen action and fight scenes with a little bit more of like, you know, the slower detective scenes of them looking at a crime scene, looking for clues and shit. I feel like this is an easy genre or like type of show that anime could really use more of, because it's more down to earth. It isn't necessarily about, you know, superpowers and aliens fighting over planets and shit and world domination and all the other crazy shit. And the one benefit to this, like I kind of mentioned like just a couple seconds ago, was that like it kind of, you know, fills that shonen void that we all kind of be wanting every now and again with animes that aren't necessarily about fight scenes, but it can give us both shonen, it can give us good drama, good, you know, sad scenes. It can give us like everything that makes a good anime all wrapped up into one. And to kind of stay on, you know, like the whole, you know, like spy and detective kind of genre of shows and movies that anime could need, I feel like this is where we could start getting into like, you know, mixing the genres, kind of mixing and mashing them to make like, you know, the perfect anime or whatever have you, right? I feel like if we could have an anime that's kind of like Inception, which in my eyes is like, you know, an action thriller kind of mixed together, that's where I feel like another thing that anime could really use is to not just necessarily have action animes, horror animes, but kind of have like action horror or thriller action or psychological horror. Like mixing the genres together, I feel like would make a lot of these, you know, I feel like mixing the genres together would make a lot of these concepts really, really good. Because a lot of times when anime is either one genre or it's another. Rare times do we really get animes that are like mixed with like 2 or 3 different genres. The next genre that I kind of wanted to focus on is mystery films. Now, I don't necessarily know if we have a lot of mystery anime, but I feel like this is another genre of anime that we really need. And one of the movies that I picked for this part is The Truman Show. And not necessarily the plot of The Truman Show, but more of the concept of something like The Truman Show. Because I talked about this earlier in the video, but it's more or less, I'm not necessarily talking about the plot of these movies. I'm more or less talking about the concept and how the plot unravels for the characters. Because The Truman Show, in my opinion, is one of Jim Carrey's like most underrated movies, and you don't really hear much about it, but I think it's one of his best movies. And it's basically, if you don't know, it's about basically Jim Carrey's character it's basically about Jim Carrey's character Truman basically being told that, you know, he lives in this town and, you know, everything, you know, seems perfect, but the entire time he's basically been lied to, and his whole life is basically a TV show for the world's enjoyment, and his whole life has been a lie. But the way that the story unravels and how he finds out is the best part about the film. And I know The Truman Show isn't necessarily like a mystery, it's more aligned with like a comedy, but I would put it in mystery, because if you watch The Truman Show, it like they try to make it funny, but it's really sad. If you like watch the show, it's really fucking sad. Like, yeah, Jim Carrey makes it funny, but it's really a sad movie, because when he finds out he's lied to, you don't necessarily, you can't laugh anymore at the movie after that. You just kind of be like, damn, that's really fucked up. And one other film that I do think that definitely falls into the category of mystery, which concept that I love and I think would make a great anime, is Shutter Island. Shutter Island is one of my favorite mystery movies that like has ever really come out. And just like I said with The Truman Show, I'm not necessarily talking about the plot. While the plot of Shutter Island is great, I'm more or less talking about the concepts and how the plot unravels for the character, which has kind of been like my main thing about this whole video. Is you can have the best plot, but if the way that it unravels and the way that the characters act as it unravels is bad, then it doesn't matter how well written it is. If the characters suck and they don't necessarily fit the mold or fit the narrative of the movie, then whatever genre it is, it won't work. Which is why I say that anime should sort of, not necessarily take a break, but like lean more off of the shonen crutch that I feel like they be on a lot of times. Because yes, a shonen anime is good every now and again, but I really feel like if anime leans more into genres like mystery, horror, psychological thriller, spy slash detective movies, I really feel like we could get a lot of great shows out of that. Death Note kind of encapsulates everything that I mean by this, because Death Note isn't a show about a bunch of superpowered people going around blowing up planets, you know, fighting and, you know, destroying whole cities with their attacks or nothing like that. Death Note encapsulates everything that I mean, and like how the story unravels and is more character driven and not necessarily, you know, superpower driven. If we could get more stuff like that, then not even if we can get more stuff like that, we need more stuff like that. We need more stuff that's not necessarily relying on, you know, fight scenes and superpowers and shit like that. And Death Note is like the perfect example of that. And I feel like, and this is really just an opinion, like I'm not saying we don't need, you know, any more shonen animes, but I feel like we could lean more a little bit off of shonen and get more genres like the ones that I listen in this video. I really feel like we could get great shows out of it, and I feel like anime will benefit from it, because I don't want us to reach a point to where we get burnt out of shonen, and then if a great shonen anime comes out, we won't be able to fully appreciate it. Kind of like the whole Marvel situation. Like before, you know, there were like 3 to 4 superhero movies coming out per year. We appreciated them more when like one came out every couple of years. And I don't want us to reach that point in anime to where we don't appreciate a good shonen when it comes out, because we just been seeing shonen shonen after shonen after shonen. But that's just, I don't want us to reach a state of burnout to where we can't appreciate a good shonen when we do have one. And I just want us to start diversifying animes now so that we won't have to pay for it later.